Right, just going to give it another few seconds so everyone can join and get their audio turned on. All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our January School Nurse Seminar titled School Nurse Educator Beyond the Health Suite, Engaging Students, Staff, and Community. We are so happy to have guest speaker Jacquelyn Raco with us tonight to present. Before passing this over to Jackie, I have a few points of housekeeping. First, this session will be recorded and placed on the PASNAP website for viewing afterwards. Secondly, in order to receive 1 hour of Act 48 credit, you must stay with us the entire session and then complete a brief survey at the end. If you are a PASNAP member or part of our school nurse mentorship program, your credit will be automatically applied. If you are not a member of either program, you will receive a certificate of attendance that allows you to upload the credit yourself. Finally, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to utilize the Q&A or chat box features, and Jackie will look at those at the end and answer as many questions and comments as time allows for. And with that, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Jacquelyn Raco. She has been a practicing registered nurse for 31 years and a certified school nurse for 18 years. She has experience as a pediatric bone marrow transplant nurse, certified school nurse, district nurse supervisor, university lecturer, university school health education program director, author, and conference speaker. She is the Pennsylvania School Nurses and Practitioners PASNAP Board's Southwest Region Co-Representative and Special Interest Group Nurse Educator Lead. She has been honored as PASNAP's 2010 Southeast Region School Nurse of the Year, PASNAP's 2021 Southeast Region School Nurse Administrator of the Year, PASNAP Conference 2022 Keynote Speaker, and the National Association of School Nurses 2022 Pennsylvania School Nurse Administrator of the Year. Her passion for nursing and education fuels her to establish improved statewide school nurse education programming and professional development opportunities. And so, well, with that, welcome, Jackie. I will turn this over to you.
Thank you very much, Angela, and thank you very much, Penn State Pro Wellness, for having me this evening. The reason that I chose this topic was when I began school nursing in 2006, I found it very difficult to be able to reach all of not just students, but their families and the community as an educator. I was in a large school of 2,000 staff members and students, and I was only making a dent on the students who were able to get to my nurse's office. And I was trying to think of ways to get out of the box to reach everybody in the school community to be an educator. 10 years later, as I began as a professor at a university and was mentoring new school nursing students, I was hearing from them in their practicum that they were not able to be an educator, that they could barely even get a lunch or a bathroom break, let alone leave the nurse's suite that day to head out to a classroom to give a lesson. So when this opportunity came about, I decided to take the avenue to present to you different ways to reach your school community that are beyond the health suite. So that's what we're going to do here tonight. So thank you for allowing me to share this information with you, and I hope that you learned something from tonight's presentation. So this is just a disclaimer that this information is not associated with any school district or my employing university. And the purpose is tonight for our presentation is right there on the screen for you, finding unique ways to educate the school community beyond the health suite. These are our objectives for this evening, which I'm not going to read through, but they are there for you. And this is something that I just like to do. This is kind of sets up our base knowledge. So I want you to take a look at these 4 questions. They're not graded, so don't worry about that right now. I want you to take a look through them and see what your answers would be. You can jot them down or just think it down in your head of what that may be for you before we begin the presentation. So I'll give you about 10-15 seconds to look over those questions and answer those. Okay, so to not take up much more time, we're going to get right into our presentation here. Before we start talking about why school nurses should be educators, we need to talk about the supporters of school nurses as educators. And on the screen there, you see that there's one person in 3 organizations that highly support the school nurse as an educator. So we're going to go through those very quickly. Our first person is Lena Rogers Struthers, and Lena Rogers was identified as the first school nurse. Maybe you've heard of Lillian Wald, who was a public health nurse in New York City who started the Henry Street Settlement. Well, Lena Rogers was hired by Lillian Wald to go into the schools and oversee the medical inspection of students. Now, Lena was really good at being tactic and having great ideas for controlling diseases, but the really big attribute for Lena was that she was insistent on educating, and she talked about educating students, how it was important to educate students to be healthy and stay healthy. And Lena knew that when students were healthy, that the whole school system thrived. So you can see there, those are the quotes on the screen there from Lena. And 140 years later, the role of the school nurse still has not changed because we are all about education. Her book, as I have a picture on the screen there, is actually listed in my references. And at the end of the presentation, you can see that we can look at that book if you like. It's an amazing book to look at what was being written in 1917 from the perspective of a school nurse in those days. Our first organization that supports the school nurse is the American Academy of Pediatrics. The American Academy of Pediatrics in 2016, their Council on School Health came out with a report that praised the school nurse in schools and how important it was to the well-being of children to have a school nurse. They found that when school nurses were educating students and communities and families, school nurses improved academic achievement, attendance, and graduation rates. Our next supporter of organizations is the National Association of School Nurses, or NASN, which is our professional organization. And the National Association of School Nurses, in their position statement, is very clear that the school nurse is a valuable resource to parents and educators and an integral source of health education. That their research has found that school nurses improve student behavior, social skills, and academic achievement. And they know that school nurses are qualified to implement health education. And they represent this in their framework for the 21st century nursing practice. Let me show you that. So this is the framework here on the, get up for you in poster size so you can see it a little bit better. This is our framework. And as you can see, NASN has the student at the center, surrounded again by that family and school community. And then around that are 5 principles, 4 that are interlocking and there's no hierarchy to them. They all work together for the best interest of the student. And then surrounding that hierarchy, or the non-hierarchy, is our standards of nursing practice that holds the whole model together. So when the school nurse puts all of this into practice, students are able to be healthy, they're able to be safe, and they're ready to learn. And again, that is all supported by NASN through their framework. And our final organization that supports us is the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, or NASM. And NASM gives a big thumbs up to school nurses and their ability to educate communities and make changes in communities to make them healthy and vibrant. Dr. Erin Mon of NASN is quoted in this NASM citation here because she speaks to the ability of school nurses being able to be hubs of health promotion and providers of population-based care. And population-based care means that you're not just taking care of a patient, you're taking care of a group of people. So as you can see in these slides here that I just showed you, the last 4, these are all strong supporters of the school nurse as an educator. And this is what you would use as your research to show that if you come up against barriers to presenting as an school nurse educator, these are the resources you could go to. There are many more, but these are just 4 that I have chosen to show you tonight that represent the student, the families, and the community supporters. So moving on from that, What's important now is it's critical to educate, but we need to be sure we're teaching imperative information. So we have key priorities and competency. Number one is health education. So you have to know what you're going to teach. If you're looking at a global issue to be teaching, that may be something that's affecting everybody worldwide that you're going to have to focus on in your school, you would pull from resources such as the World Health Organization or the Centers for Disease Control. If you were looking at a national issue, Healthy People 2030, you could go through their goals and use that as your research. State and local goals is probably what most of us would be teaching within our schools. Pennsylvania Department of Education, also known as the PDE, and the Pennsylvania Department of Health are our go-to sites. And I want to share with you on the Pennsylvania Department of Health is their school health statistics page. This is excellent when you need to show data and research to your administrators of why a lesson needs to be brought forth in your schools. So here you have their school health statistics site. You see all the different categories here. Now, unfortunately, it's only updated to 2018, but what you can do is you click on these and it brings up counties across Pennsylvania. So let's just say we want to look at, I don't know, Northeast, and we'll look at Lackawanna County. This is the average daily membership in that county. And these are the number of students with asthma. So a little over 12% of students have asthma. What you can do is go back and compare that data from the years before to show that there's a change or a need to have education on that topic in your school. So keep this in mind and always bookmark this site on your pages in your health suites, because it's a good place to go to. And then also for data, your SHARS report, which is your state report that you submit to the state that gives them all the criteria so that you can eventually be paid for your nursing services in your schools. But that SHARS data is important because you may be looking at something that maybe there's a lot more accidents happening on the playground, and you need to show your principal that we need a presentation on playground safety. That's what you would be pulling from. So our next priority then, moving on, is our legal priorities in school nursing. And as school nurses, we all work under the Nurse Practice Act. As in schools, we work under the Pennsylvania Code of Conduct for teachers and professionals. And then as school nurses, we also follow the school nursing scope and standards of practice. And these are the standards and scope that guides our practice. These are the things that we have to do to be sure that you don't end up in a legal case within your school district. So, and then standard 5B, health teaching and promotion, is the one that we really need to concentrate on tonight in this lecture, because what it is, it employs strategies. It says we must employ strategies to improve the health and safety of students, families, groups, the school community, and the population. Sorry, my Alexa's talking right now, so excuse that. The third professional competency I want to go over is our professional competency, and then I'm going to cover that on the next two slides here quickly for you. So professional competency, number one, is that our school nurse certification through the state of Pennsylvania. When you receive your certification for school nursing in Pennsylvania, you are titled as an education specialist. And that title, that certification, allows you to be able to offer staff development services to your school. You can implement and supplement instruction to classes. What you can't do is be assigned to teach a class year-round. Like, you can't be assigned to teach health year-round. But what's really important, is why I showed this to you, is that you are titled an education specialist. There's no mention of a nurse in there. You're an education specialist. So that speaks volumes of how much education is important to the role of the school nurse. The next competency that I wanted to go over is Act 13 of 2020, which is educator effectiveness. So when you're teaching in a school, you are considered a non-teaching professional, because you are defined as a specialist who provides services which are not in a classroom. And an educator effectiveness, the tool, there's a framework that has to be followed. And what happens, you are evaluated as the school nurse based on this framework. And I'm going to share this with you right now just so you can see it. So this takes you to the site here. And as you can see, these are all the non-teaching professionals, those that are not in a classroom. And right here is your school health specialist. I'll bring that up for you. This is what you're going to be evaluated on, usually by the administration in your school district. Be sure you know where this is at and you can locate it, because you will be on many components. There's 4 domains, multiple components. Are you distinguished? Are you proficient? Do you need improvement? There's prompts here that could be asked to you to explain yourself, and then ways to show evidence of practice. And the ways I'm going to show you tonight of teaching beyond the health suite are all related into many of these components. So just keep this resource in mind for yourself. Okay, so now we have gone through the important parts of getting us set up to teach. We know we have supportive organizations, we're abiding by all the codes, we're prepared to teach because we earned that certification and we're an educator specialist. We have goals of proficiency in education, and we know of our health education needs and priorities within our school. So you should be able to ready to go out and teach, right? No, that's the problem. So unfortunately, many school nurses are not being used to their fullest potential in the schools and the community. Many administrators, parents, even some school nurses themselves are prohibited in getting out and being an educator within the community. They are seen only as a caregiver in the role of the school nurse, and that's what we need to change. But the problem is we have a lot of challenges. So what are those challenges? Well, let's look at a few. Number 1, time. When do you have the time to prep your lessons or the ability to even leave the health suite? You also have access to students. Administrators and teachers may not feel comfortable with having you go into the classroom. Sensitive topics. This is one where, do the topics align with the school curriculum? Do they align with school policy? There's also the challenge of confidentiality. Usually sensitive topics are private topics. And if you're teaching in front of a classroom, there's a likelihood that confidential information could be shared, and that's a concern. Also, the perceived role of the CSN. Many times we are looked at as the school nurse, period, just the nurse, and that we need to change that. And then we also, sometimes the challenge is we are evaluated by non-medical administration. Our evaluations may be linked to merit raises, and school nurses may feel underprepared if they have not demonstrated and documented effective education members to the school community. So today I'm going to show you some ways, thinking outside the box, to take those challenges that I just gave you and make changes within your school. So what we need to first do is we need to have a road trip, because you are the advocate for yourself. So we're going to kind of look at the ways to change it around and by creating a road trip. So let's think of, we're going to go on a journey. You're going to go on a journey, trip vacation with 3 of your best friends, okay? You are going to be the trip leader. So you're going to need to plan your trip, your route, your destination, your mode of transportation. You need to look at your resources. Do you have food and gas and lodging? How much is the trip going to cost? And as a group, you would all get together and discuss the plans for the trip. And you have to be prepared, because probably one of your friends in the group is not going to like what you've decided to do for your trip's itinerary. So just like planning that road trip for your friends, as a school nurse, you are going to have challenges as an educator unless you address them with your key stakeholders. On the screen there are your main key stakeholders, and those are the ones that you have to go to establish yourself as the leader. And then once you have those stakeholders, you're going to start to put into practice your school nursing standards of practice and performance. You're going to show leadership. You're going to have planning and collaboration with this group of stakeholders. because when you plan and collaborate, that's communication. Pulling it all together. You also have to be educated, and educated just not on the topic that you want to present, but on your own role as the school nurse. If you are in a union, are you aware of what's in your contract or as your member rights in case you come up against objections of why they will not allow you to be part of an education program for the whole school? So finally, then you have to come to the table with quality of practice, and that's your data and research. And then you also have to be a resource steward, meaning their first question to you is going to be, how much time is this going to take and how much is this going to cost? So that all has to be figured out. And I want to share with you, I had a wonderful principal at a school for many years. And his whole thing about when you come to him to present something was, don't come to me with tears and words. I need you to come to me with data. I want you to come to me with research. I want you to be in front of me with that information so that I can see the statistics of why this is necessary and a good for the whole school. So keep that in mind when you're planning your education road trip. And just like our road trip scenario, not everybody's going to be happy, like I said, with the itinerary you're going to have. So you're going to have to come up with options. So just as we talked about the stakeholders, presenting them with an idea of teaching to maybe a classroom may not go well with all of them. So you're going to have to think of teaching opportunities beyond the health suite. So here's the list of different opportunities that I have come up with over the years to reach students, staff, and the community outside of the walls of the nurse's office. So I'm going to go through these for you, and you don't have to use all of them, but there are a lot of them are just suggestions and ideas to make your education journey successful. So the first one is presentations. When we think of presentations, we immediately think of someone standing in front of a group and lecturing. And that's true, that can happen. If you can get into the classroom, that's wonderful. But there's different alternatives for the nurse to reach people. So one way is to do a nurse video presentation with an evaluation, where you as the nurse would videotape the lesson. It would be shared with the classroom teacher. Best case scenario, you would have all your objectives listed. The students would be able to watch the video. They would be writing or making comments or possibly answering questions, maybe writing out remarks. And then that would be collected. It can be anonymously with the teacher of the classroom. And then that gives you the ability as the school nurse to go back over and review and see, were your objectives met and was the lesson successful and your goal of what your goal was for that lesson. Another thing to use is guest speakers. Many of you may not feel confident in standing up in front of a room and talking to a group of students. So using guest speakers to come in is a great way to get a message across. For example, say you want to talk about vaping, using a drug and alcohol counselor, or if you're talking DUI, you could bring in a police officer. This way, you are still doing the promoting of the education as the school nurse, but you're not outside of your office and you've employed, credible people to speak in your absence. So think about those as some other ways to get out to students within that classroom. When we talk presenting to the community, number one is school board presentations. School boards have meetings every month. It would be great if you could go as the school nurse and present a topic that maybe you see as a hot topic within your school community. A lot of times, school nurses will go as a group and do a group presentation, which is even better. School board meetings are held in the evenings, and sometimes you can actually use your comp time or get credit for hours put into the school day for a future professional in-service day. So that's things you could look into, as like I said, knowing your school contract, being able to get that time back for the time that you're putting in beyond school hours. Local school nurse county organizations, great way to speak. If you are an expert on something or there's a passion you have, local school nurse meetings are always looking for someone to come in and speak. This is great not only for you, but for the nurses, because you're earning that Act 48 that helps keep your certification in place for yourselves. And finally, the last presentation as a presentation for community is PTA and PTO meetings. PTA and PTO meetings are great places for the school nurse Number one, it puts you right in front of the parents and the guardians, and that starts to establish trust with you and the parents, and it helps you to build that community relationship. Ideas that you could do as one that's really successful for myself has been screening procedures, where you bring the equipment to the meeting, you review it, you let the parents touch it and see it. They understand what their little second grader is going to be going through for their screenings. And then you explain the need of referrals and why you need to send that paperwork out. You can share forms and talk about the state requirements of physical, dental, sports paperwork. You can share community resources if you're talking on a subject, and help them who are also trying to help the community get to know more people and more connections for that group. And then you can talk on health topics. A lot of times PTA, PTO like to know field trip expectations. Big one for me when I was in middle school, they wanted to have the puberty lesson taught to them as a review. And then number one, you always want to know your participants' interests. What does that PTA meeting people group want to learn about school nursing, and what can you offer them? So always, survey them, see what they want to know. When you are presenting, be sure that you align your presentation with state and district policy, and always consider the organizational goals. Another way too to make sure your name is spread out there and people are aware of what you're teaching is the PTA will put out a newsletter, and make sure your information is in that monthly newsletter as well. Presentations for staff. So we all know that we can speak at a staff meeting, we can speak at a professional development day, but again, those are times when you're out of the office already. Times when you're in the office that you want to maybe just get a little bit of time in, where you don't want to spend a lot of time with the teachers or working on big programs, is a lunch and learn. 15 minutes of your day when the teachers are having a lunch, this is a great time to present a school health initiative. So for example, I wanted to start a code blue team. So what you would do is have the lunch and learn, present the information in 15 minutes, teachers are interested, you get to talking, you get some feedback, and then eventually if you needed to do a bigger presentation on that, you would take it to a staff meeting. So lunch and learns are a great way to start. And then you could always do referral to online health trainings. EpiPen is a great example of this, where you're providing a link via email, you're going to give them a deadline to do it, they're going to complete it, present you with a certificate, and depending on what type of topic it is, either they're going to have to review that information with you like you do with the EpiPen, or you have that certificate on file, and that shows another way of educating staff. So a lot of times school nurses will ask, well, I'm not really sure what to teach. I don't know what they want. Well, number one, you can always ask your administration if they have any requests for you. You can put out a teacher survey to see what their interests are. We all know that their school-specific needs, which we can identify ourselves through that SHARS report. And then health and practice topics. This is great because this is through NASN. And you go right on NASN's site, all these school health and practice topics. They have all the research done for you. Many of them have toolkits. You're just really pulling the information together in a cohesive lesson to share with these teachers. So use that as a resource. You always have to consider your time allotment, and you have to always concern yourself, is training required more than you are able to give? For example, a lot of times teachers will want to be CPR certified. But if you are not a CPR instructor, you're going to have to figure out and bring one in and take that into the count of your costs and planning. So those are presentations for staff. So the next slide here. Another way to reach students, super easy, super fun, is through bulletin boards and showcases. Catchy themes, holiday themes, school themes, slogans, anything that will draw their attention to these bulletin boards or showcases. Get a quick, easy message out to students. You will not believe how many students will come into your nurse's office and say, or even staff, oh, I loved your bulletin board. I can't wait to see the next one. So you are making an impact in something small like this. A lot of times the problem is school nurses are located way down a distant hallway where the only people going to visit them are someone who's sick or in need of help, and they're not paying attention to the bulletin boards. So number one, make sure you have a message that is being seen. Talk to your administration. You would like to have a bulletin board near the cafeteria, near the bus loading area, near the auditorium, near the gym, a showcase in those areas. And make sure you change them and keep them up to date. Some of you may say, I'm not really creative or crafty. Go on the internet. There are a ton of school nurse ideas for bulletin boards and showcases. If you need to get supplies, you can purchase supplies that you can always recycle throughout the year through multiple bulletin boards. You can ask PTA for a donation. You can also ask your art teacher if they have anything they can borrow. But my favorite way of doing it is through thrift stores. As you can see, the Don't Be a Turkey, those are all men's neckties that I took and cut down. I paid 5 cents a necktie and got some props. So there, you can also use bed sheets at the thrift store. A lot of them have sports things on them. Great ideas that are super cheap and ways to help you build that whole repertoire of getting that message and lesson out to students. Our next out-of-the-box way is newsletters. This can be independent, written by the school nurse for the community, or you can share this information within a whole school news update, which maybe your school actually sends out. Be sure that you always introduce yourself and your contact information. You can do health topics that are related to what's going on with the school year. Make sure you announce your state mandates. Always make sure you have live links to forms. You can address specific issues. Say you're having a lot of pink eye in the school and you want to talk about the signs and symptoms of pink eye and what the school policy is. Great little article for a newsletter. Health suite directives. And then also you want to be sure that your newsletter is reaching everybody. And so you always have to consider those that are not English literate, so that those newsletters are then translated, and Google Translate is a very easy way to do that. So you need to be aware of the different diversity within your school when you're sending something like a newsletter out. When I was at the one school, what we did was we had 14 nurses. So in August, each nurse was assigned a month. They were given a topic. They had to write a little article. They all came together into one newsletter each month. We were able, with a template, to change our contact information and our school information, and that got sent out. So it's a really good idea if you can work as a team with your nurses to educate the community. That way you're working smarter and not harder. CSN-led after-school clubs and activities. The school nurse needs to build relationships to do their job effectively. The role of the school nurse can be very isolating. Some of us are in our offices by ourselves all the time. So you have to really make an effort to assimilate yourself into the culture of the school and bring a sense of community through the nurse's office. One good way to do this is by leading after-school clubs or activities. What do you like to do? If you are a walker, a walking club would be good. Are you an avid gardener? Gardening may be something you may be interested in presenting at your school. When I was at school, I had 5th and 6th grade. I started a first aid crew. I had 6th grade students who would come after school for 45 minutes. They would learn a brief lesson on first aid, such as the Heimlich maneuver, or how to take care of burns. They would help me sort Band-Aids. They would make ice packs. What they were never allowed to do was actually be in the nurse's office area near confidential information, such as medication, our screens, our files. But the students really learned something, and I got to bring the world of school nursing to them, which was great to build that trust between the parents and the school community. I had a friend who was a colleague. She did a 15 and fit where she worked with the phys ed teacher. Students came to school 30 minutes early. They did 5-minute warm-up, 15 minutes of exercise, either aerobics or obstacle courses, a 5-minute cool down, talked about how those activities increased their health, and then they went to class. And what they were finding was it was such a benefit to students who really needed to come in the morning and burn that energy off to be able to sit down and pay attention in school. So you do have a great effect on students when you are running school clubs and activities. For staff, we did yoga and Zumba classes held after school. We had an art teacher who was a yoga instructor, and we had a teacher who was a dance instructor. So that was great because we were able to bring that health topics into the school staff, and they loved that, to be able to go right after school and change down to the gym. And then national organizations, there's a ton of them. Just look them up on the internet, and then apply that. One thing you do have to know is that after school clubs usually require administrative approval and parental permission. You can also if you need to be funded, you can look for this as comp time, or sometimes they will provide you a stipend. And you can also look for grants or scholarships to run your clubs and make them effective. Our next CSN-led initiative is health challenges. Again, the school nurse has to establish themselves as the medical leader within the school. And education does not have to be boring. Like right now, I'm lecturing and you're listening, but ideally we would be connecting and having more interaction. And that's what you can do with students. And one thing students love, including teachers too, is a competition. So either it's between students in our homerooms or grades or even the staff. And you can act as that change agent within your school. So for students, one great challenge is a month awareness challenge. So one thing I had done was in February is National Children's Dental Month. I did a big bulletin board on dental health tips. And then I asked students to bring in a photo of themselves smiling. And when they brought me the photo, it went up on the bulletin board and they got a ticket. And at the end of the month, we pulled out of a basket the winner, and that person won a gigantic health basket that was donated by the local orthodontist. So the challenge is get students to participate and learn. I also ran multiple drives for mittens and hats. I collected old Halloween candy that we sent to servicemen. In the top picture there, we did an eyeglass drive that was benefiting the Lions Club. And then we did a blood drive, which was spectacular. And a lot of that was because of my principal's involvement. That's him actually dressed up there as Buddy the Blood Drop, the Red Cross's mascot. Mr. Ed Smith would go out there dressed in that costume several days before the blood drive, and he would wave to parents and pick up and drop off, encouraging them to participate. And another way to bring the parents in, we did do a basket raffle where they could win donated little trinkets and gift cards that were donated from the community and the PTA. For staff, we did Biggest Loser, where that was a district challenge where staff competed to lose weight. And we also did a Water Warriors challenge that was started by our 7th grade nurse because that group of teachers were concerned they weren't getting enough, drinking enough water. And she organized an app and a challenge. And at the end of that 30 days, everybody was rewarded with a school district water bottle. So you can see there's a lot of different ways to reach students and not have to use a lot of resources to get that message out there when you're educating them, and you're still meeting your goals as an educator. Social media platforms. Most districts today, going green is not the exception, it's the norm. So your district may have a Facebook, an Instagram, a Twitter page. Speak to your head of communication so that you could actually see if you are able to post things as the school nurse onto that, such as reminders about, school physicals or sports physicals are coming up, things that are related to health topics. Sometimes in media platforms, we can use things such as TikTok. Now, I'm not a big TikToker, but I do know that students love them, and I've had nurses use them in the past. TikTok can be shown to from a nurse to a student, where a TikTok is just a 30-second quick video with music, dance to get a quick message across. The TikTok I'm going to show you here is from Shauna DeBleek. She's in Erie, Pennsylvania, and her TikTok here speaks to the school nurse and addressing parents.
This is another question I tend to get pretty often. So Why underwear? I have a lot of underwear in all different sizes, mainly for the kids who have accidents during the school day. I am in a pre-K through fourth grade school, so a lot of the younger kids are still having accidents, and we're able to help them out by having underwear available and extra clothes. Also for, you never know if the older ones are going to start their periods, so we're prepared for anything, and that's why. Thanks.
So you can see that Shauna is a great TikToker there. You want to follow her, that would be wonderful. You can also see here that we have the Instagram that a school nurse has called School Nurse Chronicles. And then we also have blogs. Probably the most recognizable blog for school nurses is The Relentless School Nurse. This is authored by Robin Cogan out of New Jersey, who is a well-known school nurse leader. And doing blogs shows that you are an expert in the area, and that sometimes having this type of blog actually will recruit nurses to your district if you're looking for subs or others to come to be employed. The big thing with all of these types of school nursing media platforms that you are doing on your own, you have to promote them. So just think of that, because if you're not promoting them, then you won't get followers to educate your community. I do very much want to say that when you use social media platforms, you have to be sure that you are using them cautiously and that they are aligned with your district communication protocols to avoid any sort of miscommunication. So moving on, our last thing for the media platforms is our in-house district-wide TV broadcasts. So in-house, most of you may have TV in-house district broadcasts where you have your morning announcements. Usually as the school nurse, you can have them, as the AV director, pop up a visual, slide as a reminder of 10th grade health screenings will be on Thursday, bring your glasses, something like that. Or you could do it live as the school nurse. You could go into the little studio where the students are and just give your quick message. What I found though was most students are not paying attention to those morning announcements. They are doing their homework, they're chatting with their friends, even the teacher is getting ready for the day, they're not listening. So we had to come up with ways to address the whole student and the whole student body at one time in just a few short minutes. One thing we started with was a faculty skit. In that first picture, you will see Dr. Dennis Booher, who is our assistant principal. He was dressed as Old Man Winter, and we spoke to fifth graders about the importance of appropriate winter dress. Another thing that we moved on to in these very quick 3-minute spotlights in the morning was an activity called Try It Thursday. So students were asked to watch the morning announcements. It was the school nurse and a random faculty that we chose for that month, and they tried a new food. It was anything from quinoa, brown rice, avocado. And of course, the faculty member always loved it, and students love seeing faculty members, their teachers, on the screen. And then what the students would do is they would bring in a note from a parent saying, I tried avocado. We weren't sure how well it was going to go over, but it was a huge hit, and we got so much positive feedback from the parents saying, oh, we've now implemented oat milk into our diet. Our whole family's eating this. We can't wait to the next challenge. So keep that in mind. If you're not sure starting something, just try it, which is why we called it Try It Thursday. And then finally, we decided that we needed to be able to, again, reach everybody and have them all paying attention, just not listening or just trying things where it might be limited to those students who couldn't bring in maybe a note or participate. So this is where I had to develop Wellness Wednesday. And Wellness Wednesday is just a 3-minute video that was presented usually once a month to students. It ranged from anywhere. We had over 40 topics over the 3 years we were doing it, from vision to hand washing. And it was produced during the times of my comp time, or that I was able to be paid for that, or my professional development time through my contract. So I'm going to share with you what was shown to the students so you get an idea of what they saw and how we were able to gauge all learners on all different levels of learning. So you can see that the Wellness Wednesday video was something that kids loved because it showed their teachers. The teachers acted as role models for the students. The students, every time their teacher came on, they were screaming that they saw them on the screen. So it was something that really encouraged students to look forward to the next video for the next month. The Wellness Wednesday videos went off so well that I actually was approached by the district to do a television show called Hot Topics of Health, where I actually then educated the community. I did a one time a month television broadcast in the high school studios. I brought in members of the community and interviewed them, police officers, dentists, even the school, the driving school head, which was kind of cool because we talked about texting and driving. So you may think that you're starting off with something small, but you never know where it's going to lead you. So just always be open to doing different things beyond just sitting in the nurse's office and thinking that you cannot get out of there to do any sort of education. And our last part of presentation is community events. You may not feel that you can get up and do the videos, or you're not tech savvy. That's fine, but you can always participate in your community. Career health days, homecoming parades, as you see in the pictures there, the nurses were on floats. We were super nurses. We were kicking off healthy goals. The 1 year we dressed as fruit to kick off healthy choices. We participated in the Limerick Community Days, where we did blood pressures and gave out little trinkets. And the students would run up to you and be like, hey, you're my school nurse. So it's good to put yourself in front of that community because, again, you're building that rapport, you're building that trust. And then, of course, always school vaccine clinics, flu clinics, puts that school nurse front and center, showing how you are helping to educate and keep that whole community safe and healthy. Just a few essential requirements as the CSN educator. Continually participate in professional membership. This is being a member of NASN and PASNAP. Be sure that you are always looking for formal and informal continuing education, be it that you're taking continuing graduate classes or you're attending webinars like these that are offered through PASNAP or other resources. You have to always be ongoing about your own skills, your knowledge, and your attributes. Make sure you're checking yourself. Is there more you can learn? Do you need more professional development in an area before you can reach out and teach that to your school community? And probably most importantly, document your efforts on any teaching. Why is it important? Because this is what's going to lead you to that final teacher effectiveness evaluation at the end. When you document, the things on the screen there are what you need to be sure that you're noting, whatever you do, because it's really important, because that's what's going to be asked of you by your administration evaluating you. Tell me how you did it. Again, you can take yourself back to that framework that I had showed you earlier. It's important to have that on your desktop. I pulled out a few school resources here, lines from that framework. As you can see, every single one of them on that slide there is related to all of the different types of out-of-the-box educating students that I showed you tonight. And finally, our conclusion for tonight, just to wrap it up, the CSN is defined by the Pennsylvania Department of Education as an education specialist one. So be sure you are educating. You have to advocate for your role as an educator. Not many people will be coming to you to ask you to speak outside of that nurse's suite. You have to make yourself front and center and be your own advocate with your key stakeholders on board. Remember, there are opportunities beyond the health suite to meet these expectations, and you can use them in all different ways, as I showed you. Be sure that you are documenting everything that you're teaching to show that educator effectiveness. And again, always evaluate your own teaching consistently. I tell my students all the time, your lesson is probably not going to be perfect, but what I want you to do is learn from that. And if you can learn from that, the next one will be even better. So I'm going to stop here. Does anybody have questions or concerns? I'm going to stop the share here. A lot of things in the chat. Let's see here. Trying to look for questions. I see a lot of comments. I'm sorry. There's a lot on here I'm trying to read through. Somebody said, well, how do you manage to do all this when you have so many things at school to do? Well, of course, you have to prioritize what needs to be done. Your students' health has to come first, but you also have to figure out a way as that school nurse to also use your role as educator. And as I said, a lot of this was done during comp time, which was part of my contract, part of professional development time, which I was allowed to do. And, you know, some of it went towards Act 48, where I was learning how to put all these things together and attending school nurse meetings, things like that. So you kind of have to make it a priority, as well as that health of your students, to get out there and reach everybody. I see that some people have Instagram, social media. That's awesome. There's a lot to go through here. And if there is anything on here that I'll take a look at after, and I can email you directly and answer that for you. Let's see here. So let me move on to my next screen here really quickly. We do have some Q&A here. Oh. I did not have to get any approval from my district to do any sort of prizes. Our school orthodontist, our school dentist was affiliated with the orthodontist who donated the packet, which was a giant basket filled with toothbrushes and, referrals of toothpaste and floss. So there was a ton of things in there. So, but we did not have to get any sort of approval. But that's a wonderful question because that's something your district may require. Mine just did not. And no, I am still not at Eastern University. I am now at Millersville University. We moved to Pittsburgh. So I am on the western side of the state now, and I'm loving it. So thank you for asking, though. I think that the presentation can be, Katie's going to take care of that for you. I think that getting together for professional development to improve your image and to make the nurses who make the community aware of who you are as nurses and what you can do. Most of the time school nurses are looked at as the Band-Aid pusher, the ice pack giver. I mean, if you just look at any memes, they're all about school nurses and ice packs. But we are the ones that have to promote ourselves. Again, you have to be that advocate, and doing that as a group and having professional development time is extremely important. Sorry, it's kind of just, there's a lot on here right now. So I think I've answered them, and I don't want to, you will get the slides tonight, and I don't want to hold you up because we're getting towards the end. I did want to give you a little bit of a road game here, a road trip, since our theme was kind of on a road and journeys. Look at what I gave you tonight. Choose one of those alternative education techniques. Determine 2 pros and 2 cons for using them at your school. And then when you're looking at those cons, try and determine a way to overcome that barrier. Who do you need on board? What do you have to do? And how would you need to go about advocating for yourself? What research, what data would you need to present? That's a good way to begin to think out of the box. I did want to thank you. This is my contact information. You are welcome to send me any questions at the email there. I am at Millersville University. And I also, if you have just school nursing questions in general, I love to be a resource to new school nurses, and I'm more than happy to help out. These are my references. And again, I did mention that the Lena Struthers 1917 school nurse text was linked in here for you. So it's really cool to see you can actually download her book and just go through it. That's archived here in the National Library of Medicine. But I found it really interesting as I was reading through it, just the chapters of what Lena was focusing on back in 1917 and what was her priorities of the actual medical care of the students and the health education topics of the time. Like I said, you need to know what is important in your schools. Lena in that book expresses what was important to her. So I thank you all very much. I'm going to stop my share right now. And thank you again for Penn State Pro Wellness for having me this evening. And thank you all for taking the time out of your busy evenings. I know how important those evenings are for everybody. And I'm so thankful that you were able to join me.